Thank you. So good evening, everyone watching at home. You're here with the Mayor and Council of the Town of Berlin, and we're grateful to have our state representatives, Senator Mary Beth Carrozza, Delegate Charles Otto, and Delegate Wayne Hartman here with us this evening. It's structured as a work session so that the council can have an opportunity to speak with our delegation members that are getting ready to go to Annapolis in January to represent us and do a great job of representing the town of Berlin. Since we are live, I've said it privately, but congratulations to the three of you on a successful campaign. We look forward to working with each one of you again over the coming years. With that being said, we've had the opportunity to sit down with one another in the past. I think year one we did that virtually via Zoom. I like having everybody in person a little bit more. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry that it's the day after Election Day, but it's nice to have everybody in person, and I know your schedules fill up rather quickly, so thank you for making the time for us. With that being said, it's a very informal setting this evening. If there's anything that throughout our conversation that you believe the town of Berlin should have on our radar as we get ready to move forward into the legislative session, please let us know. We try to stay abreast of what's going on. You all do a great job of keeping us informed, but if you see something on the horizon that we need to pay extra attention to, please just let us know. We've done our introduction, so I think everybody knows one another. I think we're all familiar faces, but we'll get right into it. I have a couple items. I'd like to talk about our infrastructure, some of the traffic. We do have many state highways that run through Berlin. You're all aware of our challenges, but it's just nice to reiterate those and have that conversation together. You're aware that we're working on a community center over on Flower Street, so we do want to pick your brains a little bit about bonds and maybe the best way to position the town of Berlin for that moving into the session. And then you know that we have one of our electric utilities, one of the 5 in the state of Maryland, and you have been very avid supporters in the renewable portfolio standards. So we'd just like to keep that on the forefront of your mind as you move into the session. I think it was 2 sessions ago. I think both the Senate and the House members here passed and supported the RPS legislation to be able to reduce the cost for renewable portfolio standards and the solar credits that we have to acquire as a small municipal electric utility. And that's saved our taxpayers and ultimately our ratepayers of the electric utility a lot of money. So we are very grateful for that. So we'll start with the aging infrastructure. I know that we've received some funds from the ARPA legislation at the federal level. We're putting that to use in our water, sewer, and stormwater. And I think that it's just important for everybody to know that I know we made progress last year on highway user revenues. They're very important. They help us take care of our streets and a lot of the things that go into running a local government and keeping our streets clean and looking nice and drivable and all those things. One of the big things that we have actually ahead of us is West Street. West Street's a challenging road given the fact that a lot of that roadbed infrastructure needs to be replaced. We've looked at that. We've costed the road out. We're looking at several $1 million there. So just if there's ever something you see grant-wise that could help position us for funding or a better way to tackle that challenge, we would appreciate that. And my colleagues here on the council, feel free to help me out here. You're very aware of your constituencies and the challenges that we're facing as well. We also have over on Flower Street, we're looking to do some realignment work. We're grateful for the state and the work that you've done on 376. But with that, I mean, you know it's a major thoroughfare for folks that are heading to Assateague and taking the back way to Ocean City, but it's also a major neighborhood for us. Yeah. And it crosses right at that intersection. It's challenging. We're looking to do some realignment work and improve some accessibility there. So I think that anything that we can find to be able to make that a smoother process would be great.
So what are the plans beyond what's already done? What are the wishes?
So we actually have plans drawn up, and it's been shared with SHA, of the alignment of Flower Street and Decatur Street, which would create a nice pass-through for the cars currently. If you're by our police station, you either have to go right and then left to hit Flower Street. It's like a weird... So we have the easements in place, and
so it would go closer to the commercial store and the
correct
police station. So it would go.
So it would be more than 4 lanes.
And when the Flower Street or the Dollar General property was sold, there was an easement that existed with that to be able to do the alignment. But it's a several $100,000 project, as you can imagine, to be able to align those. But it has implications on emergency vehicles and safe egress to be able to respond to calls. So it is a pretty crucial issue for us.
So where the road is now, what would you do with that?
So Decatur Street would come a little bit closer to Dollar General and align with Flower
But the
Street.
existing street in front of Dollar General and the police station, what would that property become?
That would probably, it's currently more stormwater now since the improvements have been made with expanding the road. So it probably wouldn't have much use outside of green space and maybe to help alleviate some of the stormwater impacts there.
But that is a project that is actually ready to go because we have the easements, we have the property, and what we actually need is the funding just to do the work.
Right.
And
Now, did I understand, because I touched base with SHA, because we've had several issues that we're working with you all on, and they were talking about the intersection as far as, I think, making sure, I don't know if they're talking about, putting signage or the crossing, which would build on the work they just did as opposed to, we're not going
backwards.
We're not talking about, we're not talking about jeopardizing the work that was just.
No.
Okay.
And SHA is aware of the plans to align, so they took that into consideration when doing the work with 376. But it does make it a little bit more challenging the second you expand that turn lane and things like that. Now you're crossing another lane of potential traffic.
But we have had concern in that the intersection dealing with how the intersection is striped or lined, because for somebody that's not familiar, that can
Right.
be very confusing.
Right.
And when you cross 113, you actually end up in another line of traffic. So that could be, that's a consideration also.
So it's not clear, so you actually have to move out of a lane to get in your proper lane.
Yeah.
So it's very confusing.
So, and I think that's where, SHA has been responsive to us when we've asked them to, be hands-on, and, whether, however you're talking about doing that striping. I hear what you're saying, it becomes important how it's done.
Yes.
And I think having them physically, on, with you, working through that's important. And for instance, they were extremely responsive when we moved forward with the immediate safety improvements we made at Grace Corner Road. And part of that was, whenever anything's tied to a safety issue. So I think to the extent that we can focus on it tied to safety will ensure that we get the needed changes the way that you want them done.
Now, I think it's also important to note that Decatur Street and Flower Street are both town roads. So
Yes.
those, we would not be looking for the state to fully absorb that.
Right.
You know what I mean? That is a town-owned road. We're saying that if you encounter or know of some funding avenues, that would be appreciated for a project such as that.
Usually when you tie pedestrian safety, like Senator Cruz was saying, bicycle or walking past, there's even federal money. So there's a lot of push out there for that right now.
I agree.
While we're on that intersection,
But I guess I'm a little confused, because I thought you were actually talking about some clarification on 376 itself, where the intersection is.
So that's it.
Correct.
So it's a little of both, and I think we kind of went a couple different paths with the discussion. SHA's been very helpful with some of the don't block the box
Right,
and
okay.
some of the additional striping and moving some signage to make it a look. You figure expanding that lane of a turn lane, none of us knew how that was going
Right.
to truly work,
Right,
right?
right.
So we're working through those little kinks
Okay,
together,
okay.
but SHA has been great to work with.
Okay.
And the Decatur Street and Flower Street alignment, SHA is aware of, but that is a town project.
Okay.
It is a town project, but
I
it
understand.
crosses the state.
Okay, so, and then that's where you were seeking the
Right.
grants for the Decatur flower line, whether it's state or federal.
So even with tying into what Delegate Hartman's question was, what would you do with what's there now? If you look at how SHA, as the mayor had started to discuss how they set up the drainage already, it's almost as if they set it up in preparation for the move.
Okay.
When it's widened out, the drainage right there. I wasn't gonna get to it. I wasn't gonna get to it, but it's widened out. The drainage on the side of the road, on that side, so that when we do the alignment, it doesn't, you know what I mean? The space is already started, it's already started to absorb the shift.
They were cognizant throughout the planning that ultimately the intention was to align those two roads. So I think that you're
Yeah.
exactly correct, that they did sort of configure things in a way that hopefully will work
Yeah.
best
Right,
for the
well,
future.
that's good then.
Project's ready to go.
But while we're on that intersection, right where Flower Street hits ST Road, there's been a request by residents to put a crosswalk from Flower Street over to the sidewalk in front of Dollar General. And I don't know if you talked to SHA about that, but if you guys can
We did,
reinforce
but
that.
the challenge is, and they actually did this right where a little bit further down
Right.
on Bay Street, they cross a road midway. They say they don't like to do that. And I understand the rationale. And where they don't align, it doesn't really meet the need for a crosswalk or I guess, boundaries for a crosswalk.
The
But it would
preference-
be, yeah, it would be very helpful for our
Yes.
residents.
The preference, I think, is to put a crosswalk where cars have to stop at stop signs or stop
Right.
lights, rather than just in the middle of a road. where-
However, I can get
There's
what,
no street.
I can get what you're saying, council
Yeah.
member.
I see people run across the street there.
I mean, constantly, it's, and just, it just,
And it were.
it's not, well, right there, it's huge, because, I mean, there's lots of children and young people going back and forth with strollers and whatnot,
Right.
trying to get over to the sidewalk that leads into
Dollar
the Dollar General,
Yeah.
because it's safest to go on that sidewalk rather than trying to get up onto Decatur and go over. But with that traffic, now with 3 lanes crossing, yeah,
There's a lot of discussion in Dollar General. For full disclosure, I own that property. I'm the landlord for Dollar General, so.
You should put it inside.
And we did not know that prior to this discussion, just so everybody watching knows.
So, and I didn't know this was the discussion, so,
I didn't expect to spend this much time on it, but it's.
you're talking about putting a crosswalk where there's no stoplight, or I'm thinking of St. Louis Avenue in Ocean City.
yeah.
Crosswalks throughout the street, but the one that maybe the most relevant to this, they have that raised sidewalk at Third Street. It's not a speed bump. It's a raised sidewalk, so it connects the two sidewalks with, you're talking about strollers and stuff like that. It would slow down traffic, and, there'd be attention to it, whether or not State Highway would be willing to do something like that. But,
That's not a bad idea.
Then you have your trailers and RVs.
Yeah, there's a volume and the type of traffic that may make that.
So-
If we could get your help making that
I can see people
crosswalk happen, that would
getting hung up on it.
Or at least a little safer for the people who utilize that road regularly, not just concerning, and don't get me wrong, tourism is phenomenal, but those folks don't travel that road daily, like these children and those people who are going back and forth.
So tie it to safety, and I would suggest that the SHA, let's let them be the.
They're the professionals. Exactly.
So what often happens with SHA, if we can zero in on the safety issue, and what we're trying to accomplish, and ask them for the options, and they normally will, propose what makes sense for
That
that
sounds good.
particular situation.
I-
So,
And I know that they've been spending a lot of time out there with what they've
Oh,
been
yeah.
doing, so hopefully they see what we see.
So those are just a couple items, but I think they all follow a similar pathway that we have a lot of
Well, since we're in the
infrastructure.
neighborhood, let's round the corner onto Flower Street. Let's talk Flower Street, since we're here. Should we, Mr. Burrell? Council member? The traffic, and this is a huge bit of contention for every one of us sitting at this table. But for those of us who live on 518, my children and grandchildren at 515, and all of the seniors in my neighborhood. Flower Street has become, and this is, I mean, it's just the nature of the beast, it has become alternate Route 50.
Yeah.
It has been. Berlin Intermediate is here,
Yeah,
Buckingham is
yeah.
there, the high school, the middle school there, Worcester Prep and all over. And then now the daycares are there, right there on the strip, Bundles of Joy and what have you. That being said, the traffic that rides through is ridiculous. I live at 518. My house sits back off the street. My children and my adult children, 2 of them, and grandchildren live directly across the street from us at 515. We wanted to keep them close, but their house is a little closer to the street. So if my 3-year-old grandson were to step out into his front yard, the chances of traffic, the speed limit in my area is 30 miles an hour. Traffic is clocked on an average of 55 to 60 miles an hour on my street. Why? Because I'm always out there watching. Because I have a 3-year-old who knows Mina and Papa are right across the street. Ooh, he sees the dogs in the front yard. He opens the door every morning and he dances to us and he wants to come across. You can't. School buses, cars, people are speeding through, somebody's on their cell phone, people are beeping. You know this.
People people trying to get to school on time.
Exactly.
And then we have the teenage drivers that
Yes.
are trying to get to school.
So your speed
Flowers.
limit, so you're not requesting a lower speed limit because you already have it, you're requesting enforcement?
So no,
Not
I think a lot of that may fall locally too,
I was gonna
because
say,
that
yeah.
Flower Street is a town
Right,
road.
town
It
But
is.
it's an
It is.
example of some
Police
challenges that spur over into the safety side of things. And I think
Safety is
some of that is
huge.
where it's just a main, like it's straight and there's nothing stopping, you know, I mean, there's no stop sign, there's no reduction in that, a
So
person's
thinking
travel.
again, if you're St. Louis Avenue and these raised, I know that that's our thing, it's a
Right, that's a
town.
Berlin.
I understand that, but think about that because everything that does touch the county comes through Flower Street, even though it is a Berlin town street.
And with the projects that are taking place currently, like with the repaving, I know a portion of that, and I do want to thank the 3 of you. The traffic signal at Route 818 and 113, so that's South Main and
Mhm.
113, I think
Yes.
that's big. And we talked about the safety side,
Yes.
right? We've been,
That
we-
ought to break that up some.
yeah, we brought that, and I know the 3 of you have as well, we put that in our consolidated transportation plan request. We've also requested a signal at the north end over by the state police barracks, so right over here on North Main and Route 50. We're told that it doesn't meet the warrants for a signal, but which is challenging, but it does have a significant safety implication with not having a traffic signal there.
So, making sure I understand the intersection, what's there, it's nothing there now, there's, all the doctor's offices are back a little bit further.
Yeah.
And then on that corner, it's recently sold, I think it's a pending sale sign.
But there's also, so the parcel, the one that has the pending sale, right?
Right.
So, Main Street and Route 50, it's the southeast corner parcel. That's the one that you're referring to. So the southwest parcel is probably going to be developed into something that's a higher density level, which is going to change the flow of traffic there at that intersection. And then you figure you have Sunrise Church, and then you have the other parcel across the highway that is always looking to rezone or something.
That's something.
Right.
So you've already made a request to SHA for that?
We have, and they've evaluated the warrants for the signal, and it doesn't meet it, but I think that if you look at some of that flow of traffic, right, I think that a more thorough evaluation of that intersection
Can you
might be.
forward that letter to us so that we can use that and bump it back to SHA?
So I think part of the challenge there too is the proximity of Main Street and the
Yeah,
exit
right.
to 113. That was part of what they expressed, because you would have people turning right onto Main Street and then immediately also going right onto the exit. So that was part of it.
And that might be one, again,
Part of the reason not to put a light there?
Yes, yes.
Is that was in the response?
I can't say that it was in the response, but that is something that I have been told.
The response that I have it via email,
If
send
you
it to
afford
me.
both, and
Yep.
then,
The one that I've received is that it doesn't meet the warrant.
So,
once that
again, going back to
property's
SHA and the way they operate,
Yeah,
It's gonna
and
put a
put a hotel there and a gas
Mm.
station, and some
So
other
that's high
stuff.
volume.
I brought that to their attention too, but maybe we can revisit the
so,
issue.
again, I'm just kind of the process with SHA, just to manage expectations, and sometimes it is a process because you have a changing situation of what's been occurring on those properties. As you all know, it took a while to have that light put in at 60-foot road on 50.
Yeah.
Part of it was, a changing situation, tying it to safety. And I understand, getting out in front of it, but it sounds like there may be new information. Sometimes before they will approve a light, there's other options that they want to either try or propose. So I think if we can always keep these conversations with SHA focused on safety, and then letting the experts come in, and if we are making, we were successful in making a strong case for the light that's coming in on the south end, and that was with a lot of community support and built up, and my understanding that's to be put in place by the end of the year. Now, if you're saying we're shifting, and we also made this other request, I think it's important that we keep giving them the changing, updates. And also if there's, in between, if there are safety steps we can take, I'm always one for take those immediate safety steps to make sure we're protecting, and then does it lead to a light down the road?
And I think it's also important not to say that we have an excellent relationship with SHA.
Yes, period.
And I mean, we're talking about some traffic things, and they're the topic of conversation, but please know that they're excellent to
Right,
work with.
yes.
Our local reps with SHA have been phenomenal. They're very responsive,
some
so,
of the players have recently changed.
and they're still very responsive.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and I think, Andre Futrell is from this area, and he's basically has kind of taken, with the transition, has taken a very hands-on approach. And the fact that he has family in this area, bodes well for us and the responsiveness from SHA.
And I think just if I can jump in, just like a new look, I got a job in Salisbury, is where I work now. So I travel 50 back and forth, obviously, to work. And there's no light from 60 foot until you get to Stephen Decatur.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think that just kind of sometimes a holistic view, or a bird's eye view, if you will, of some things like that. By the way, there's 13 lights between here and my work. So, after you get past 60 foot, right? So, just things like that. I mean, nothing I'm throwing out there for just as another fresh set of eyes, that there is actually no traffic signal stoppage from 60 foot till you get to Stephen Decatur. That's a pretty expensive. It's probably equivalent, I would guess, until, thank you again, everybody, for the light on 818, but it's probably the same from, I would say, Snow Hill to AGH.
818, I think with all the schools and everything, it was very easy
Yeah.
to make that case. Because the proximity from the schools and people trying to get out.
And buses will sit there for an extended period of time.
At this-
Well, that's right. yeah.
I mean, because you figure a
They
bus
hang out
traveling,
there.
it will, I mean, I don't know what the delay time is there, but they've got students.
I mean, if you think, you drive every day, you might not think of it, but
Well, I drove from
Yeah,
Salisbury
see?
at night. And most of the time I was going 53 or 55, who I was traveling on.
And staying in the transportation vein of the discussion, thank you, the three of you, for supporting the rails and trails
Yeah.
proposal for the town for phase one. That grant application is in, we're waiting to hear back. The county's been a great partner in the funding portion of that, so it requires a 25% match on behalf of the town. The county has split that with us for 2 fiscal years, so we're very grateful for that. And it will utilize the existing railroad easement from Old Ocean City Boulevard, Heron Park, all the way through town with phase one and phase two once they're complete. The other side of that is we were talking a little bit about 376 and trying to tie in with the bike network that's taking place. I understand that they're putting in the bikeway down through to 611, and any way that we can connect, or 610, my apologies. No, 611 is over by Aspen. Any way that we can connect and continue to connect our biking network and trails to the remaining portions of the county and the state would be great. So just, if you ever see something that you think could be a fit, pass it along.
Is that piece is part of the overall plan?
I think so, yes.
Because I
So
know there's a group that's connecting.
the Worcester County Bicycle and Pedestrian
Yeah.
Coalition,
Right.
and they've been working with like the Route 90 stuff as well.
Right, exactly. So
And-
I'm trying to figure out all these pieces we have to make sure,
Yeah.
you know,
Figure
link
out, come
together.
together.
Mhm.
And it's a little easier when you can use like the existing state highway easement or the existing railroad easement. But first and foremost, I wanted to thank you publicly for supporting that project. And then also, if you ever see anything that could be a fit, just point us in the right direction. So, with that being said, the community center. So we've been working with the BCIA, oh, sorry.
That's all.
The Berlin Community Improvement Association and Shore Up to build a new community center on the site of the old multi-purpose building on Flower Street, and new classrooms for Shore Up as well. And with that being said, the town has acquired a parcel of property that was being sold by the Booker T. Washington Lodge that is all part of the old Flower Street School. And then Worcester County transferred a portion of property that has a stormwater retainment pond in the back, which is all part of this larger parcel. And then the BCIA is working with the town to transition that property over. So all in all, it'll be about 7 acres, plus or minus, for a community center on Flower Street. And with that being said, I know that there are Senate and delegate bonds that are available sometimes throughout the legislative session. And if we could get some more information about what those deadlines would be, what type of information you would need from us, and if that's even a possibility to put one of those forward for, we would be at the professional services level for some planning and design work.
I don't know if there's any money in community development, housing, community development, do something like that. You're not talking about a senior center or?
No, it wouldn't be a senior center. It would be a community center for our youth and for the community to come together and have gatherings like community meetings. It's like a club, or an organization, or like a birthday party or an anniversary or things of that
So
nature.
I think,
Wi-Fi hotspot,
Wi-Fi hotspots.
after
all-
school if needed.
so I think Delegate Otto's point is DHCD, especially the current secretary, has been pretty creative on
Yes.
tapping other sources. Even he knows how to leverage federal dollars and sometimes other dollars. So I think it is worth just, if there's enough of a summary of the community center, that we would share that with the leadership of DHCD now.
Okay.
And then as far as possible bond initiative, either on the House or the Senate, I think at this point, letting us know this early, because we are starting to get requests. I can tell you I'm receiving requests from all 3 counties. So I think knowing that this is something that, you know, that Berlin is going to request, it's good that we're flagging it now.
And we do have, I've tried to do a little bit of research on the bonding process. I'm not
So
overly familiar with
We
it.
can share that information.
Yeah.
But we do have some matching funds that we can utilize for that as well, so.
Okay.
it's-
So you would need a project summary?
Yes.
Of the community center?
Yeah.
I think to give to DHCD to get them started, absolutely, and then, you know.
And most of
and
our
then we-
bond initiatives
and-
need to
and
be
we
shovel
need-
ready.
right.
Yeah.
We can put together our discussion points already with the group and frame that out and pass that along.
That money's good for what, 3 years?
Yeah.
But I think, at least unless they've changed it up, I think that they did have some parameters, and I may be mistaken, for the initial like site work and stuff to get it shovel ready, but it has to be used.
And
for
that can be used
construction.
against the matching funds.
Okay. All right. That's perfect.
Yeah, we have some leeway with the bond initiatives, but I think pursuing multiple avenues
Mhm.
is important because just realistically with the number of bond requests we receive and then and so there are some possibilities with DHCD to like, and just another funding source, a possible funding
We're
source.
open to anything. If the bond is not the appropriate pathway to go and we can achieve a similar result through
A
DHCD,
combination or.
we're open to those things. But
So let's call it a park and we'll look for program open space.
Space in the backyard.
Councilmember Nichols and I, MML, oh, sorry. Councilmember Nichols and I at MML, we did have an opportunity just to briefly speak with DGS. And that, I understood that to be as a possible another possible.
General service.
DGS, right? I get DGS.
Department of General Service.
Yeah, so that's,
And we
it seems to be
actually have
funding source.
we have a local representative in leadership there from Salisbury, Louis Luna.
Oh, yeah.
Who might be someone who, again, is always helpful, and we have some folks in state government that know our area, our area.
But also, I mean, I'm sorry,
That's
delegate, I'm
fine.
sorry. Listen, I'm sorry, it's after 3:30.
I go
and the
by that
children
more than
are
I do
gone.
Charles.
So I, delegate, listening to what you say about parks, the space is right across the street from, diagonal to Henry Park, and our park green space that's connected to Henry Park. So if you want to call this a part of the park and call it a campus, which I love that word, a park campus, if that'll get us some project open space, I'm saying.
I don't know what the parameters the department's putting on that now, but they opened it up more for maintenance and creative aspects to do it, and it's pretty flush with money.
Community center, parking campus.
Yeah.
We'll summarize the
campus.
project.
We will summarize the project.
We'll summarize the project, and whatever you believe is
We will
a
summarize the project.
fit, you point us in the right direction.
Creative writing.
I can get into that
Creative
too.
writing degree, we got a couple of those over here.
We've got a team.
I've
Mayor
seen
Williams, we
Steve's
might have to
creative
tie you
writing.
into that as well, some creative writing.
Or Councilman Green.
It's always helpful to know the different funding partners. Is the county also a possible funding partner for the community center?
Well, the same, I would say, I think 2 fiscal years ago, we asked for some design work, survey money from the county. It was, I think, $7,000 and some change. They did not fund that in FY21, I believe. I'm doing that off the cuff. But in FY22, they did transition property. So they are supporting the project. I don't know what their fiscal position was on that at the time. So I wouldn't say that they're totally out of supporting it, but I mean, they've been supporting us through land and other things.
Okay.
We have Commissioner Diana Purnell that's on our
Right.
group as well, so I think, I don't want to speak
They've
for
been
them,
doing it
but-
more as in kind, and so they're supporting it, and it's been primarily in kind. And
I don't want to speak for them, but they have been very helpful when we ask, so. We'll transition unless anything else, Councilmember Burrell or Nichols, from our conversations regarding the community center that you think is worth noting. If not, the electric utility. It's kind of an animal of its own, given that there are only 5 of us in the state that do work and have an electric utility. So we touched on this in the very beginning, but the renewable portfolio standards credits previously, going back a year or two, we were having to acquire those solar RECs at a much greater number as if we were a large, more robust electric utility than what we currently are. We are a small electric utility that just serve our customers here in Berlin, and we're not for profit. So the support that all of you provided in reshaping that RPS standard for the municipalities goes a long way. to the tune, I think it's saving us a couple $100,000 a year,
Yes.
which is pretty big when you start talking about a customer base. It's only a few thousand customers.
Easton has one too.
Easton, Thermont, Williamsport, us. So yes, we've all come together. We've tried to keep an eye on the legislation that may have impact on our electric utility. And we're doing that through the work. Brett Leininger, he was with Old Line. I think I don't know who he's with now, but he still is. So Brett's helping us. He's helped us the past 2 fiscal years. We'll probably continue with his services this fiscal year. Just to keep an eye on what's going on, because it is rather technical, and it helps when we're all together.
How many customers did you say, sir?
We have several thousand. I want to say, like 5,000 or so customers.
3,500 accounts, serving
Oh,
about
accounts,
5,000 people,
Right.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
So when you take a couple $100,000 and divide it by 3,500 customers, you can see the impact on our utility customers' bottom line pretty easily. So if you ever see anything, MEA has been a great partner, Maryland Energy Administration,
I would expect.
as it relates to our natural gas generators or the rooftop solar. We're always looking for projects where we can expand the solar opportunities here to, currently we have to buy those RECs, so to meet our renewable credit threshold. But if there's a way that we can continue to do that here, locally in Berlin, that's something we want to continue to pursue. So if you see something or know of more funding, or if more funding ever crosses your desk, we would like to continue.
Yeah, I think one of the things we want to do there is, recently, within the past few years, we transitioned one of the diesel generators to the natural gas generator, and had a huge impact on our ability to generate power. We'd like to transition the other two to natural gas as well. So that would be a key source, if we could get funding to do at least one of them.
And they're diesel now?
They are.
2 of them are diesel, and then we have the new natural gas
One
generator, which is
right.
where we want to be with all 3.
Yeah, we have capabilities for 5.
Correct.
But we have one that's down, one that was insuranced, and one that is the natural gas and 2 diesels.
Yeah.
MEA's been great on the partnership side of things. They awarded us a $425,000 grant.
Roughly.
And we're talking about a transition that's several $1 million. So they've been great to work with in the fact that they've allowed us to make strides toward getting in a position where we can get that natural gas generator in. As you can imagine, there's infrastructure improvements that need to be made when you're transitioning from a diesel that literally looks like a locomotive engine to a natural gas generator. So we develop a plan of how we can kind of piecemeal the stride toward natural gas, and we say, MEA, does this fit? And they've been great to work with and said yes every single time. So we're making forward motion in that respect. But the size, I think we were looking at a potential solar canopy, similar to like what you see, not at the scale of Warwick or Salisbury University, but something along those lines. But I think the size of the project was going to be a little bit more expensive than the available grant funds. I think they were for more rooftop-based solar. So if there's ever the opportunity to adjust that to cover a little bit more of the solar canopies, I think that would be great. Because we do have some parking lot coverage that could fit that. And it satisfies some of the recs that we need, that we're literally buying from all over the country. Because we're buying them from PJM, and they're not generated in Maryland, let's put it that way. So, but those are the things that were on my list. I don't know if my colleagues on the council have anything they'd like to add, or if the 3 of you have anything that you want to put on our radar as it relates to the session ahead. But we have a few more minutes. If one
We never know. We call you when we see something that comes up, and
you're great at that too, by the way. We appreciate the communication. You're always great at letting us know.
Well, first of all, thank you for this update, and, I know we spent a lot of time focused on, the challenges that we have with transportation and tied to safety, so that's always top priority. I did want to ask you, because Berlin has done so well with the Main Street program and Ivy driving that, and We really use Berlin as an example for other municipalities throughout the district that I represent. Is there anything as far as Main Street projects that you want to share an update with us? Because we have been successful with Governor Hogan in supporting the increases to that, funding that program. But, I also know that there's a lot of jockeying for those funds as well.
So that's a great point, because DHCD is a great funder. We've, I believe the three of you wrote letters of support for the strategic demo grant, which we were awarded, which is huge for the Tyson project and revitalizing that area of Old Ocean City Boulevard. But with respect to the facade improvement grants, right? That's through DHCD. And we typically apply for $50,000 a year. This year, we put in an application, I believe, for $100,000. I know, I can at least say that it was greater than 50.
Yeah.
But to your point, Senator Carrozza, the competitiveness of that grant, we were awarded $50,000, which is typically what we have. We were hoping to expand that program a little bit. But
And that 50,000 is specifically for facade improvement?
so that's for facade improvement grants. And what we do is they're for the commercial
Yes.
properties downtown, and it requires a match by the property owner, as well as the town will act as the pass-through with those DHCD
Is it a
funds.
50/50 match, or is there?
I don't know the
leverage on
threshold off the top
I
of my head.
believe it's 50/50.
We just changed the threshold, I know that.
Yeah.
To require a little bit more, I think, of a match on the side of the property owner. But needless to say, we got the $50,000, and we requested the 100, but I mean, we understand the competitiveness of that. There's also, we're always looking for like streetscape grants, any way that we can underground our utilities and add to the aesthetics of undergrounding those and putting the Victorian lampposts in goes a long way aesthetically, and it has carry forward effect with property values and overall.
Well, that update's helpful, obviously, with a new governor, new administration. We want to make sure that the priorities that we've been able to work on with you, transition to the next administration. So, and some of these programs have been very important, not only for Berlin, but for many of the municipalities throughout the three counties. So this is, so we can use, we use meetings like this to underscore the importance of continuing support of those programs, especially in rural areas where, we tend to have to fight a little bit harder and to make sure we receive our fair share, so.
And staying on the tourism side of things, our Economic Community Development Director, Ivy Wells, and I were talking 2 days ago, I think, about ways that we can expand the reach, right, of Berlin. It's one thing to pull from the market that's over in Ocean City. We get folks that know about Berlin, but attracting and continuing to attract visitors in our shoulder seasons to help with our businesses, an economic driver, and how we can do that, right? So pulling from folks that are doing things well across the state. I know that money goes to some of the designated marketing organizations. We are not a DMO, but the county is helpful with passing a lot of money our direction and support it, but we're always looking for ways to expand the outreach and marketing efforts of the town.
And along those lines, I want to compliment the Worcester County Arts Council and the partnership with Berlin, that program. The show that you do at the plein air and then having it in the library is actually drawing artists from around the region, and it's also now with the displays is becoming an attraction on its own. So sometimes I think, that's something that's very unique to Berlin. And what I think you've gone from having that just be Berlin and all of Worcester County plein air, which again, we need to take a regional approach to our tourism, and Berlin's right in the middle of that. So.
And we've got a vast market from the metropolitan areas and the surrounding communities that are not too far away from the Eastern Shore. I mean, there's a lot of potential for all of us to continue to succeed in that respect, so.
And that's why I noticed that Berlin hosted the Eastern Shore municipalities, and that it is good to see you all together in the same room again, kind of taking the bigger regional approach. Because then I do believe that we're in a better position to leverage whatever might be out there, whether it's at the state level or the federal level.
And you bring that up, so we all know Charlotte from Rural Maryland Council. So I've been trying to get, and you talk about folks in the rural areas of Maryland needing to maintain a stronger voice and things of that nature. So I've extended the offer. Hopefully we can start getting some more of those meetings here on the Eastern Shore and in Berlin if possible. So pull on different partners that are, I mean, we're not that different, right? We might be in the Eastern Shore, we might be in Southern Maryland, might be on the Western Shore, but we're not that different. Our challenges are still very similar. So maybe we've got some folks that are approaching challenges a different way, and we can learn something from one another.
So I think if I can, are we just going around the table?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think that's actually a good time to what I was wanting to talk about, which is just a couple of things. The first thing, I can't remember if it was ESAM or LM and a P or what it was not. And actually, Senator Cruz was sitting beside me as well, and I mentioned stormwater. And I was wondering if these are things I'm just asking for the delegation to put on their radar to think about it as it comes up possibly to the session, and how the municipalities can effectively integrate their stormwater in cooperation with HOAs that exist in their municipalities and private owners, because it's all connected. It affects everything regardless of who owns it.
So my response to that would be, that's where I think you really need to leverage the Maryland Municipal League, as far as, I'm assuming, you all are members, you pay your dues.
We do.
Make sure you get your money's worth out of that, because that's an issue that cuts across, right,
Everybody.
and
There was a substantial fund that went into the flooding basically for Ellicott City because of their efforts. But everybody's entitled to part of it.
And so when MML makes something a priority, instead of like individual municipalities, coming and approaching us, when I always ask if something is an MML priority, it really puts you in a better position.
And even if it's not a priority, sometimes you can get they'll at least come testify favorably for certain
Yes.
things and those things as well. So I know they have a finite amount of legislative priorities each year, which is rightfully so. But they do often support things that do have local impact across the state. So we can always keep our eye out for those as well.
And I can tell you when that question is raised, does MML or does MACO support something? So it's a question that we ask, but then the follow-up question is, if I find out MML does support something, but sometimes there's a disconnect between the bigger municipalities and the smaller ones, so then the follow-up question is, does the Eastern Shore, Municipalities Association support this? I do the same thing with MACO, because the big counties will support something, and then say, well, does Worcester support something? So, but I'm a big believer in, you all pay those dues to those associations, and, make sure that they're paying attention to your priorities just as much as some of the bigger municipalities.
Thank you for that. And then my other thing was, this is more guidance, I guess, related, or clarification on the definitions set forth in the law for casino revenue usage. I'm a little bit of a political dork, so I read the bill myself in my free time. And it's just a little, it's a little broad. And I think that if it could be drilled down a little bit more as to what specifically can and can't be used with those funds. For example, public safety is a very broad umbrella. and what exactly in public safety can those funds be used for.
But sometimes broad is good.
Well,
And-
yes.
And to that point, though, I have, and we talked a little bit about this offline, I have had that conversation with DLS, and we're working through like what's a good fit and what's within the parameters and stuff like that. So I think that narrowing down on the project that we would like to see and whether or not it conforms with legislation, I think we're trying to understand that already.
But it has to be tied to the county.
Correct.
Well, the shared, I mean,
Well, Berlin and Ocean City and the county gets
everybody gets a portion.
certain
Right.
And then at the meetings,
percentage.
you know, we have the meetings that when we go over the,
Yeah.
I mean, why,
Well,
you know, if
and
it's,
the interesting part about the bill is that I think Ocean Pines is a designated representative in the bill. Ocean City's a designated representative in the bill, Berlin is not. At least in the copy. I know
But
there was
it-
an amendment, but at least in the copy that I have seen.
But the gambling or the gambling authorization came to a constitutional amendment.
Correct.
so are
And
you,
that would have to go, any changes to that would have to go before the voters.
Are you getting a
And
general
general election.
We are, we're fine in that respect. We're working through the logistics.
Jack, do you want to be specific on what
I
you're
mean,
talking
is, are you,
about?
because it sounds like, are you talking about usage?
Well, I mean,
Specific need.
specifically, I wanted to see if it was possible to use at least a portion of our casino revenue for LEOPS, which is
Or
the
retirement?
law enforcement
Well, that'd be
agency.
public
Right.
safety, I would say. I
And we're
think it
working
would qualify.
We're working through the process.
We've had mixed
But
answers.
there was
Yeah.
feelings
But
and responses.
if we need to, legislatively, we can, I think that would be something.
Get an attorney general.
We'll keep you posted on it, but I think we have a path forward for that. And we've talked offline about this as well, that I think there is a path forward to cover the requests that the town has. And we'll keep you posted on
But
that if we
I
need some
will-
help.
I
but-
think in general, if the delegation is willing to look into that, as you said.
Well,
that-
legislation is last resort, but if
Yeah.
that's something that, I mean,
But we can't change the Constitution.
No.
I mean, other than propose an amendment to it, and it would go before the
We're
vote.
working with the LDC, and, which is a local development council at the county level. We've got some projects that we'd like to fund, of which is LEOPS, and we're working through the best way to make sure that that fits within the scope. And I think that, yeah, we're well within the scope of the legislation, I think, and we're working to just make sure that we all agree that that's the best path forward.
And I have learned, working LEOPS issues, they have their own complex set of complexity. And we do have someone that we work closely with, Ann Gothrop, who has kind of become our, you know, she's the expert on LEOPS, and she is actually helping on some specific projects in my district, in Chrisfield. So if we're kind of going down that pathway, we want to pull her in as well.
We've done the study and updated it. We've got a plan and a path forward. It is one of the most critical local issues that we're facing, and it's across the state, is law enforcement, recruitment and retention. Yeah, recruitment and retention, and we understand that LEOPS is something that is going to make us more competitive, and it's fitting within, we're one of the last municipalities to adopt that within the local geographic area. So it is a huge hurdle for us to overcome when we do look at recruiting and retaining officers. So it's a priority of our police department, it's a priority of our police chief, it's a priority of this body. We've got a pathway to fund it, I think. We just have to work together to reach that. So-
And then, I'm sorry, I thought that was my final, just real quick here, with the passage of the cannabis question yesterday, I'm just curious as to what the process is now with the legislation. I know, if I understand correctly, now the legislature will decide how that's going to be.
how it's gonna look unfolding, and who's gonna own the license, how they're gonna divvy them up, all that will be decided during this next session. I think it goes into effect in July, so.
Buckle up. I mean, if you look at what we just went through with the
Gambling.
legalization of medical cannabis.
Oh, I'm talking about the gambling, how they're distributing those licenses. There's a lot of complexities as to
Yeah.
what the owners look like. You understand as far as minority ownerships and things like that, when the medical cannabis came out, I think there was some heartburn among some of the members of the General Assembly as to the ownership of those. So when the gambling changed and we have the sports betting, you know, those licenses and everything, that got very complicated. The reason why we still don't have it is because they were very concerned as to the distribution of those, the ownership. And I think we're gonna have the same thing with this. So it could be very complicated and maybe not come out as quickly as we all.
I mean, if you just look at how long it took to work through the medical cannabis legalization and the ongoing issues with that. So, you know, it's, you know, obviously there may be incentive because of the push for the revenue. But at the same time, the process, there will be a lot of scrutiny and controversy, I believe, as we work through this in the Maryland General Assembly.
And I think some of the leadership don't necessarily believe that the revenue is, you know what I mean, that it went to vote as a way to satisfy some of the members of the General Assembly. I don't know that leadership is necessarily as excited as, so.
Others. Okay. So TBD on that. Thank you. And those were my 3 things. Again, congratulations on your re-elects, and I will pass it on. Thank you.
So I don't know if anybody else has anything that they would like.
Go ahead. Who you go?
All right, thank you. Inflation. I was just curious, that was the #1 issue in campaigns, across the country. Some things I've been reading was about inflation. And I guess I'll just call it relief bills, but I know you made it sound like that you don't really have much of a pathway for what's coming down the road, but I was just wondering if that was something that you see potentially for municipalities, and even private businesses as well. I don't think, Berlin does not have I don't believe, an expenditure problem, but we're probably looking at one down the road. We were very grateful. ARPA support was great, but from what I'm understanding, some of the department heads is that it looks like those dollars may not even cover the projects that we have tapped because of rising costs of everything, bidding process,
Lead times.
Yeah.
Let's say there was.
Lead times are the biggest hurdle that we're facing right now. I mean, there's really not much you all can do about that, but when it takes a year plus for us to get a transformer for a home,
Yeah.
I mean, that's
a whole
huge.
nother,
Well,
that's a whole nother
that's
issue.
another
The government, again, wherever government seems to get involved in there's action and reaction. And the material that's required in transformers is the same material in solar panels, which is creating a shortage of transformers in particular. Some of the utilities, and being a utility owner, some of the utilities are trading transformers right now to meet the demands of what they need because they can't get a certain transformer. So you have this, another utility needs that, and there's a lot of trading going on to satisfy that need. So that's something we learned when I had a meeting with Chop Tank, and then we had another issue where a constituent reached out to us because of, through another Delmarva Power, to supply some commercial buildings that were built and couldn't get a transformer for them. Yeah, so it's a huge issue. So transformers are a big issue, but as far as some relief to inflation, and not to get too political, but that's the Republican caucus pushed very hard for different types of relief, especially through the gas tax and things like that. There wasn't much consideration from the other side. So I'm sure as a caucus, we'll be looking at some of those things. That's the #1 issue facing, right. So, and we're limited to what we can do because a lot of it's supply chain, a lot of it's, can be done at the federal level. But, here locally, to me, taxes and everything else, we're all part of that burden, and including property taxes, hint, hint. So, whatever we can do as elected officials to, minimize that burden, I think it's appreciated by all of our constituents. So.
And if I can add, we are going to have we have a governor, a whole new administration, and a whole new Maryland General Assembly. And we're going to have, I think, having to hit some of these issues head on. Delegate Hartman's on, Ways and Means, so, he'll be, following it that way. You look at we tend to work together as an Eastern Shore delegation, which is 9 counties, 12 delegates, and 4 state senators. So, that's how we leverage, our strength. I think that with a new governor administration and a whole new Maryland General Assembly, that along with the challenges, there are also opportunities, because some of us have, worked these issues in the past. And, we're not going to raise any expectations, but certainly we're coming from districts where, we were, cost of living, that was an issue. Public safety, these are the issues that we're hearing from our constituents. Going back to the effort that we made to try to, remove that automatic, permanent increase to the gas tax. So you'll see that those continued pressure on those issues. But again, this is where like MML and MACO and, where, you can leverage, your association with those groups to, if they make some of this a priority, it keeps the pressure on the Maryland General Assembly and the new governor. So, I just, we'll continue to work with you at the local level, but sometimes it's strength in numbers and leveraging what we have.
I agree. And you brought up the sharing, Delegate Hartman, of some resources in the electric sphere. The town of Berlin is part of something called AMP, American Municipal Power. So we do, and we have shared some resources with other folks. As a matter of fact, I think we ended up getting some transformers early on, or possibly, I think there was an exchange with them in Ohio. And then the other thing is that with being a member of AMP, when there's a storm or something like that and somebody's out of power, we do often send mutual aid responses. So there's a big mutual aid agreement with AMP and those partners. So we also have them locally with Chop Tank. We just renewed ours. So they're big things, which you all know as well. So, Vice President Burrell, I think you have something on that.
Zach mentioned earlier about undergrounding the utility, the electric utility downtown. But our electric superintendent tells us that it would be in our best interest to work toward undergrounding the utility throughout the town, especially in the aged neighborhoods. So just keep that in mind as you go through the session, and if you could assist in any way with trying to assist Berlin in putting us in a better place for these 100-year storms, that 1,000-year storms that folks are having. Our superintendent says that we really need to look at undergrounding this utility. So anything you can do would be appreciated.
I can tell you the town of Ocean City is looking at a project on Baltimore Avenue. A part of it was done. I think it's about 15 blocks, and the price tag is in excess of $30 million. It's a very expensive endeavor.
Oftentimes, I'm sorry, I thought you were.
Yeah, so, I mean, it not necessarily are there always programs for stuff like that. But I think it's worth doing. It's just one of those things, and it's going to be more expensive the longer you wait. I mean, I was on the council 8 years ago. St. Louis Avenue was a fraction of that, and it was put off, because of the expense. And now Baltimore Avenue, I think, is 3 or 4 times. Yeah,
Initially,
right. So,
And you look at, pulling on the point of underground utilities, when we're talking about DHCD streetscape grants, one of the contributors to like a higher cost of that in at least one of the streets that I know very close to us right this moment, is not the town's cost of utilities. It's compelling some of our other utility partners that may have cellular or cable to see the value add in undergrounding those utilities, and oftentimes they want to shift that cost entirely to us.
Yeah.
So even though that's not our infrastructure, and it's going to add to the stability and all those things, it's usually a contributing factor. So, all right, I want to be cognizant of time. We've been together for a little over an hour, but if anybody else
I
has
just have
some
one
final
quick thing.
points.
We talked about a facade program for commercial businesses on Main Street. It's wonderful. The state gives us money for that. Are you aware of any facade money programs for residential?
Well, I'm thinking OCDC, Glen Irwin used some of that money I thought went for residential.
But the money we obtain is strictly for Main
Or so-
Street commercial.
Is that,
So, and to help a little bit, the city of Cambridge has received some funding, but I believe that's at the federal level, Councilmember Nur. But
Yeah, I'm wondering
if
if
there's
state
ever,
fund.
if there's ever anything that comes out, and we also had some assistance from Tri-County Council, they funded the full cost of the housing study for the town, so we do have that underlying data that we can put to work to hopefully potentially leverage it.
I always thought it was two separate applications.
Right.
But reach out to Glenn. He is certainly a master in that. I mean, he has done it for years. And I remember, and there's also different kitties that he, some of it's for energy.
Yeah, there's.
You know what I mean? So,
Energy
Soar up, I think.
so if you're doing something to reduce your energy costs, there was a grant for that. I think, they were giving you a couple of $1,000. And then you could get facade money. So a building project could have incorporated several of those different programs and grants that he administered, and I think it was all through DHCD. So I really think he's the expert to reach out to. I mean, you know him well
I'm just
enough to
looking
do
out for
that.
residents as well.
Right, so I mean, ask him how he went about it, because he is truly the professional that's, I heard rumor that he's retiring soon.
He's
he is,
retiring.
and he has helped other municipalities as well, and he's just a wealth of knowledge.
Sure.
And as far as another person, I think the two people that come to mind as far as being masters of leveraging different sources of funding, along with Secretary Holt at Department of Housing and Community Development, I would put Glen Irwin right up there as well.
Sure.
So-
And Councilmember Nichols, you and I believe Senator Carrozza, you were there in Ocean City when he was giving the talk at the ESAM dinner. But it was more
Yes.
commercial focused, but we'll have to tap in for maybe the residential component as well and reach out to our partners.
So real quick, I know everybody's ready to go. I'll leave you with this to sleep on, because if I didn't say it, I wouldn't be able to go to work tomorrow. Traffic, I know we've talked about safety, but I've got to talk about the safety of our children along these thoroughways that are mostly SHA walkways, driveways, what have you. My children at BIS, the driveways, the lack of traffic slowdowns or what have you, what do we call those things, crosswalks? My mind is escaping me because it's my bedtime. But crosswalks right along that way for those children that are biking to school. We have the largest number of bikers that travel to and from school. About 30 children riding bikes to school every morning. Those, yes.
That's just for BIS. I mean,
That's
you figure
just
we
for
have 5
intermediate.
schools.
You're talking William Street.
William Street. Like, I'm gonna take you a little bit further because I've gotten a couple of we always get these calls, but as of late, more conversation again about Decatur and Decatur Middle. Crosswalks right about there because now Oceans East exists and those children are they have to walk to school. So having some thoroughways and walkways, yes, you've got crossing guards there, but there are and I know that that's within town limits or what have you, and that's also SHA, but think about, we're talking safety here. If I didn't say this, my coworkers would have my hide tomorrow, so please think about those crosswalks for those children. Berlin Intermediate School, Stephen Decatur High School, Stephen Decatur Middle School, those need to happen.
So you figure we have 5 schools, 4 of which are public schools in Berlin, and then we also have a private school. With respect to the crosswalk at Seahawk, the challenge there, we have evaluated that
Right.
also, is that you have sidewalks on the Ocean's East side, but if you do the crosswalk, there's no sidewalk there on the school side to pick up the student traffic. So you would essentially be leading them across the other side of the street with no safe passage to school. So that's a challenge.
Well, the only true benefit there is they at least have their crossing guards. They have 5, 6, 7 of them out there to at least, if there was
Bring 'em
something,
across.
to help get them across. Whereas at BIS, you talking to the used to be crossing guard, and I retired this year and handed that off to someone else, but he too has said the same thing. You know, the gym teacher now does it. We rock, paper, scissors for years, and it was me and another special ed teacher, but now he's doing it. And he says the same thing to me, dude, Shanika, can somebody work on, this is like this, I've got 30 kids on bikes and walking, and usually there's a parent that meets them in the afternoon to help get them across, but that's, you know, that's a dangerous, we're talking William Street, not Franklin, because everybody thinks in front of the school, and the children leave the school from the side, not the front.
Well, thank you all
Something to think
again.
about.
We appreciate
Yes.
your,
And I go through 2 crossings that, like you're saying, with blinking lights, that they can push the button that come through Camden Avenue in Salisbury.
Right, we don't have anything of that nature, but our traffic is
But
almost compatible.
it's a 2-lane road
Yeah.
though, but
Do you know, in addition to your raising it here, if either school leadership or the, you know, Worcester County Public Schools has raised that as an issue as well? And just you know.
So you're saying beyond my school, Berlin Intermediate, have we raised it?
No, I'm just trying to, so
Within the school board?
from the standpoint of, you've got, obviously, you know, the request is being raised tonight, and it is a safety issue, but because it's impacting our school children, and we're talking crosswalks, that it sounds like we have school personnel involved, that I just was trying to see if it had been elevated within either the individual schools or, you know, at the, you know, superintendent's level.
Definitely the sheriff's office level, for sure.
What's that?
The
Yes.
sheriff's office level, because the security guard, you know, crossing guards are employed by the sheriff's
Oh.
office, so they're aware. But we actually, a coworker of mine is a crossing guard at Stephen Kennedy Middle School, and he was told by somebody within the sheriff's office that it was actually Oceans East that was supposed to be putting in the crosswalks as part of the.
was there a permit?
They did their side.
yeah, they,
But
They show
nothing about
No.
cross-
I think each time, I think it's important to recognize that when we've asked for Oceans East help with working that intersection of traffic coming out, they've been great partners.
They
They
have.
have been. Now, I think the challenge with the crosswalk, once again,
Yeah.
is where they end up. So if we were to put the crosswalk in, there's no sidewalk infrastructure there to lead to.
Frankly, if Oceans East were to put them in, excuse me, without somewhere safe for the children to go, they would be then
Yeah.
liable.
And the town too. So, I
So
mean, if we
that's-
were to put them in instead of Oceans East, we would be liable also.
Yeah.
The safety parameters for those are similar to the safety parameters that SHA uses. Now, I think to the safety component, and this is going to be on, it's coming up here tonight, but it's something we've all talked about as well. A discussion item on our meeting agenda for Monday night is when we talk about the flow of traffic and enforcement and the issues with recruitment and retention and officers being able to help be in those locations to mitigate the speed. We are going to start the discussion on speed cameras in the school zones to just see how that would maybe help. Well, I mean, Wayne, we're all like this too sometimes. But when you are down 4 officers, it gets challenging on the enforcement side of things. And it's one of the chief things that we receive as a municipal government is the speeding complaints. So we're trying to make sure that we keep the roads safe for children and bicycles and pedestrians, but we're trying everything we can. So it's going to at least be a discussion item.
Why do you, what's your
Just
opposition?
usually the locals are the ones that complain the most when you do something like that. It's, you know, because they're the ones traveling the roads the most,
Yeah,
so.
you gotta slow down.
You know, so if there's other tools that you can use, like those things, those cameras, portable cameras and things like that, and try different tools before you go to that, because it's usually your locals that are gonna get impacted the most and be the biggest complainers once you do it. So there are steps to lead up to it, so before you go to that, I would just encourage you to use those other tools
So
and
we have-
use that as a last resort.
So we actually have 2 speed boards, and we do rotate those, and they are capable of logging the speeds. We're getting consistent speeds, but the challenge is that when we have force of 15 officers and you're down by 4 or 5,
Which is a problem across
I mean,
the
yeah,
country.
it's, I mean, we can't just, we are going through the recruitment process for some new officers to put through the academy, and hopefully that'll be fruitful. But that's a year turnaround time. From the time that they're onboarded to the time that they've completed their training and their FTO, we're looking at 12 months. So, and the challenge is when you have, I think the police chief has brought this up multiple times, we might have a population of a little over 5,000 people, but that changes drastically by the time the folks are coming into the hospitals and the schools, then you have the parents dropping off their children.
Two major highways. and-
Our population swings drastically on a work day. So, to Councilmember Green's point, if you are speeding, there's a very simple way to avoid that fine. You know what I mean? Whether it's from our officer or whether it's from a camera.
Speeding
Just
with your child in the car through
Lift
someone
up your,
else's neighborhood.
lift your foot off the gas
That's
pedal.
it.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's all part of ways that we can move forward with safety and traffic. So we appreciate your time. We appreciate
I think the threshold for them is pretty large.
12 miles per
Right,
hour.
exactly, so if when you're already talking about a slow speed limit road, 12 is,
It's significant.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's what I would encourage others, before, because somebody going 40, there's 30, that allows them to go up to 42.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a long
PJ,
evaluation process.
Chrisfield.
Just- Yeah, just so that everybody knows, it is quite an evaluation process of whether those would ever
Respect your neighborhood.
even be installed. But it is something, I think you brought up, Senator Barroso, working through solutions that are in the short term for some of these public safety challenges, so.
Yeah,
We're
and
trying
I
to
guess
explore them
just
all.
to close on that, because you brought it up, and, we're more than willing to go to SHA about, especially the school safety issues,
ma'am.
but I think it would be, especially if we're, again, bringing it to SHA's attention, I know they'll be responsive, I think it would be helpful if we're doing it in context of the Worcester County Public School System, because we touched on 3 schools in the public school system, and then if there's other issues, with Worcester Prep, but I think that rather than nickel and dime
No, I agree.
SHA, if I'm thinking that if we could go and say, we were at this meeting, the issue of school safety and crosswalks, especially with the number of students on bikes, that's new information for all of us. Maybe the school system elevating it, that, we want SHA to come out and evaluate and look at all 3 of these, and, have them come up with maybe some short-term, I'm always looking for some short-term immediate safety improvements we can make, and then if you have to look at something longer, down the road. So I don't know if you want to take that back to the school system, or if you want us to use this meeting and I'll contact the, Superintendent Taylor and, have his transportation director involved. But I think we would have more success with SHA if we just, made that request, elevated it and say, we want you to come out and look at all 4 of these schools. The bike ridership is up with these, with
The school board
students.
definitely
Right.
needs a seat at that table.
But that's what I'm,
Yeah,
right,
sure,
right.
yeah.
And the
Absolutely.
superintendent's
You got a red here
office
sitting over there.
and the school system have been great. We had some challenges with our elementary school and the queuing of cars and obstructing traffic on South Main. They retooled the whole drop-off process, and I think that's running much more smoothly. So they're great partners also. So I think that we're talking about some ways that we can improve things, but it's also important to accent the accomplishments with that group also. But
Sounds good.
any questions from the press, or are we good?
Could I just say something on this?
Typically on work sessions, we don't
Okay.
do public comment,
That's
but,
right, you said that. Sorry.
all right, anything else from the group? All right, thank you all, we appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. And parade entries.